Well, it's Quest for Business now, for obvious reasons. So Quest for Business, we talked about this at Connect. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. It's one of the pieces that we're rolling out. There are a bunch of fundamental pieces that we need to roll out over the course of this year. We talked about the Microsoft partnership. Even before that, before Quest for Business, you've got to get to the basic pieces of things like multi-device management, MDM in the industry terms, login and account structures that allow IT administrators to feel confident about the data that's going to be on the machine. So there's a bunch of blocking and tackling that we are doing, and we're rolling it out continuously over the course of this year. So this is now Quest for Business, and it is ongoing. 6-2. I mean, it really depends. Am I playing towards the front of the green, towards the back of the green? What's the contour? No, I'm not kidding. I'm not that good at golf. I can hit it there, the pitching wedge. I probably try to take a light 9-iron to just give myself a little bit more options on the run, because I'm not really dropping it in there from a high altitude exactly. So I am not good at golf. I love this question because there's been a lot of speculation, and most of it has been wrong that I've seen. A few things. First of all, Quest Pro had a lot of jobs to do, and I think is doing them very well. Number one, we wanted it to be kind of a benchmark, and I have seen that happen. Whatever other headset people are reviewing, they're comparing it to the Quest Pro. I love the comparisons that people had to the PSVR, which has a beautiful display, but it's optimized for very different things. The clarity on the Quest Pro is still, in my opinion, the king. Why is that? We optimized it for clarity because of the types of scenarios we're designing it for. Of course, it also is the benchmark for a bunch of features that are out there right now. I think Meta Reality is the best available. I think the eye tracking and face tracking is the best available, and we're working on increasing the tools developers have to take advantage of those things and their availability to consumers, as well as the content that can drive them. Of course, it's also meant to open up new ideas of use cases, things that are in the productivity and collaboration space. So in a lot of ways, Quest Pro is doing all these jobs well. Why lower the price? Two things. As we guys probably noticed, in the end of January, we did a little price test. It's very hard to know price elasticity in advance. So you do these little pricing tests to see what those curves look like, what the demand curves look like at different price points. It's a little more predictable at lower price points, but at higher price points, especially with novel value propositions, you kind of have to test it. We did do that test, and what we found out is pretty meaningful volume bump when we drop the price down a little bit. So we're dropping it down a whole bunch, in fact, to pick up that volume. Now, I think the Quest Pro is going to be in market a good long time. That's actually how we designed it. We wanted it to be in market a good long time. By the way, the Quest 2 will continue to be in market a good while longer as well. More on that later. So what about this Quest 2 price drop? Well, I want to talk about the efficient frontier with you. Real economists will probably disagree with my oversimplification here, but we all kind of learn, right? Supply and demand, they cross at a point, and as you move the price, you kind of move some point along that, and you increase your supply, and your demand goes down, and inversely so. It's not quite true. What often happens is there's a set of points that are efficient frontier, and no matter where you move along that frontier, you actually are basically economically neutral. Why is that? Well, in the case of consumer electronics, the more volume I'm driving, the lower my component supply costs, but also the more units I can amortize my fixed costs across in the way that I account for them. And so there is this kind of interesting relationship where if you can reduce price but increase volume enough, it's actually economically somewhat neutral. And since we are a company trying to advance VR to the most people possible, we are inclined to take those trades. Other companies don't. Why wouldn't other companies take more volume if it's economically neutral? Well, because they want to defend the ability to charge higher prices. That's very important to them. You can imagine what companies I might be referring to. We have no such compunction. We want to get this out to the most people possible, and if we can do that in a way that's economically neutral for us, we're inclined to do so. That's the efficient frontier. That's what we're trying to push on here. We're excited about it. I think it's going to be a real challenge to other headset manufacturers to meet the value that we are providing at that price point. It makes us competitive with total cost of ownership systems that are much, much higher that we're competing with, and I think we have the better product. I think these are good things. I don't think they're great in every scenario. Voice can be a very awkward and imprecise mechanism for input, as we've all found with phones and things. And so voice can also be very useful in the middle of something else and your hands are full, digitally speaking. And so I think voice is a useful one. And I think eye tracking is a little finicky at times. It takes practice to get good at it. It can be good. It's also, again, it's a nice one where it can be a very subtle way to do it, but you're overloading an output and input. You have to like learn to treat your gaze as both a control mechanism and an observation mechanism, which does take a little mental effort. So I think they're good, and I think they're part of a complete input system, but they are not enough on their own. Great question, Ian. Yeah, so I think certainly what's something we're looking at. We've got Supernatural within. I think that's one of the reasons you bring in a talented group like that, is to let them do what they do, but also influence you earlier in your process of design and development. So that is something I think is going to be a thought for us, because I do think it's such an important important category, and I think it's probably actually a bigger category than we realize as it relates to more active games as well. When EMG is really fully realized, which I think will take a while, more than a decade to be fully realized. We'll see early versions of it before then, but more than a decade to be fully realized. It will change everything. It will change everything. The typewriter, the keyboard that we have goes back to the telegraph days. And first the telegraph, right, was a single tap thing. And then you figured out that you could actually build a faster mechanism for typists to get through more volume more easily with less training on Morse code by building at first key sets and then chords and then ultimately typewriters, which is what they turned into when typewriting became a thing. So that is an old technology that we're still using, and it's a pretty great one. But like, and the mouse, goes back to the 1950s and 60s. Novel input technology takes a long time to integrate into society, and it's not displaced easily. But with things like the internet, and if you had totally ever-present, reliable, consistent EMG, every single device that you interact with, your house, your car, your microwave, your oven, they all have weird esoteric control schemes. Microwave is like famously the worst control scheme. I've never met a microwave that was like actually liked using, that could be done so easily, universally, with a proper input mechanism. TVs, TV remotes, everything could be done with EMG and effortlessly. And I look forward to that. But that's a long ways out. Like I said, so great EMG more than a decade out. The integration into our everyday life are things that we're using that will take a long, long time, but it will be a profound change, and I think a lasting one. We are going to start recording again soon, and I am excited to tell you my first guest is going to be none other than Mr. John Carmack. So I don't know when it's going to be. We got to record it still, and then we got to edit it and publish it. I don't know how long that takes. So a little while yet, but it is coming. Well, I guess I kind of walked right into this one. First of all, I don't like the leaks, and I think they're bad, and they make it harder for us to do our jobs. But if you had to have a leak, I'm glad it was Alex Heath. I thought he was spot on with it, very straightforward in the coverage, and I thought it was, I respect that about him. However, I do think one thing that is so seriously misunderstood is how the funnel of development for hardware works. Over the course of the time that I've been here, actually even going back before I've been here, I would wager we probably cancel 2 prototypes to every product that we ship. And so each of those teams developing those prototypes believe and want them to be the next headset. And when we put them on the schedule, we want them to be the next headset. But conditions change, and the lead times are so long, you have to have multiples in path if you want to be able to ship in position. And so you always have this position where you have headsets that are on the roadmap, and then they're not. Does that mean the project is canceled? No. There will be a Quest Pro sequel. We had a couple of candidates that we liked. We decided they weren't quite the right trade-off for what we were trying to deliver to the market at the right time based on signals we're getting from the market. So we make changes to the roadmap. We fold those learnings into another prototype. Those teams go work on the next piece. But this is just the very natural course of hardware design where you have long lead times. 18, 24, 36 months, depending on how many new technology initiatives you want to fit in and how much risk there is. And you're getting market data all through that. And sometimes you can integrate that into the prototype. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes priorities just change as you learn more information, as competitors come out. So those teams didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't a huge, it was a shift, certainly, but not like one that was a devastating one. I do think people are inclined to read too much into prototype roadmap changes. Shout out, trust yourself is the family motto that my wife and I came up with for our family. We wanted to believe in that, and we happen to have named it after that Tracy Emin art piece that we have in our hallway, which I used earlier to introduce this AMA. Agreed. This is a reference to a post I put up last week where I built a camera. I built a camera called the Walnut Camera. You can see a post in my Instagram profile, on my Facebook page. I put it on Twitter too. I will definitely not make them to sell. That would be a terrible business. It took me like 2 years to make one camera. That is not a great way to reach a market. My next project is, this is probably backwards, a history of the photographic lens. I'm going to try to make my own camera lens. I'm very early in that process. I expect that to take me the next several years. I really think that AR is going to be the successor to smartphones. I really believe that. It'll take a little while. Smartphones are great. We still use laptops, computers, telephones. We use a lot of things. So it's not like it's going to be like, oh, overnight we're going to switch. But over the fullness of time, I really believe that AR will be the true successor to smartphones, hopefully in my lifetime, and not too late.